Marcus wiped the sweat from his forehead as he leaned against the railing of his small research boat. The Australian sun was particularly harsh today, but he couldn't complain. Studying coral reefs was his dream job. The gentle waves rocked the boat as he checked his equipment for the afternoon dive. Just one more site to document, he muttered to himself, marking coordinates on his waterproof tablet. His research on coral bleaching could help save these underwater treasures, and every data point mattered. A splash in the distance caught his attention. At first, he dismissed it as a dolphin or maybe a sea turtle, both common in these waters. But then he heard something that made his heart stop, a cry for help. Marcus scanned the waters, his hand already reaching for his binoculars. Through the lens, he spotted something that didn't make sense. About 50 meters away, there was someone thrashing in the water, but their skin, it had an unusual bluish tint. He blinked hard, thinking it must be a trick of the light or his imagination. "Hold on," he shouted, not wasting another second on questions. Years of rescue training kicked in as he quickly stripped down to his swimming shorts and grabbed his emergency rescue kit. Without hesitation, he dove into the warm waters of the Pacific. The person, if that's what they were, was struggling to stay afloat. As Marcus swam closer, he noticed more details that his mind struggled to process. The drowning figure had what looked like small, shimmering scales along their arms, and their hair seemed to move in impossible ways underwater, like living tendrils. "Focus on the rescue now. Questions later," he told himself firmly. When he reached the struggling figure, he realized it was a female form, but definitely not human. What he had mistaken for a bluish tint was actually her natural skin color, and those weren't just any scales. They were iridescent patches that seemed to pulse with their own light. Most startling of all, he could see what appeared to be malfunctioning gills along her neck, opening and closing erratically. The strange woman's eyes met his. They were a deep purple with no pupils, just swirling patterns of lighter violet. Despite her alien appearance, Marcus could read the panic and fear in those eyes clear as day. He moved closer, using the universal sign for "I'm here to help" by extending his hand slowly. The woman grabbed it immediately, her grip surprisingly strong despite her obvious distress. Marcus noticed webbing between her fingers, but he pushed that observation aside. Right now, she needed air, and fast. Using his rescue training, he secured his arm around her waist and began swimming back to his boat. The woman didn't fight him. Instead, she seemed to be trying to help, though her movements were growing weaker by the second. The journey back felt like the longest swim of his life. Every few seconds, he checked on his unusual rescue victim, noting with growing concern that her skin was starting to lose its vibrant blue color, fading to a pale cyan. Finally, they reached his boat. Marcus helped her up the rescue ladder first, then quickly climbed aboard himself. The woman collapsed on the deck, her gill-like structures still spasming uselessly. She was trying to speak, pointing weakly at her throat, then making a gesture like she was putting something on. Marcus looked around frantically, his eyes landing on a small metallic device floating in the water near his boat, something that must have fallen off her during the struggle. Without thinking twice, he dove back in and retrieved it. When he returned to the deck, the woman grabbed the device with shaking hands and pressed it against her neck. There was a soft clicking sound, and suddenly her gills stabilized. Color flooded back into her skin as she took several deep breaths. Marcus stood there, dripping wet, and trying to process what he was seeing. He had expected today to be just another regular research day. Instead, he had just saved what appeared to be an alien from drowning. The woman sat up slowly, her strange eyes focusing on him with an intensity that made him step back. Then she spoke, in perfect English. "Thank you for saving my life, human. I am Naira, and I believe I owe you an explanation." Marcus stood frozen on the deck of his research boat, water still dripping from his clothes as he stared at the alien woman before him. Her words echoed in his mind. She spoke English, perfect English. You You can speak our language?" He finally managed to ask, his scientific mind already racing with questions. Naira adjusted her position, sitting cross-legged on the deck. Her movements were graceful despite her recent near-drowning experience. The afternoon sun caught her scales, sending rainbow reflections dancing across the boat's surface. "We've been studying your species for quite some time," she explained, her voice carrying a slight musical quality. "Learning your languages was essential for our research. Though I must admit, English was particularly challenging with all its irregular verbs." A small laugh escaped Marcus despite his shock. Here he was, having a casual conversation about grammar with an alien. He grabbed 2 bottles of water from his cooler, offering one to Naira. "Thank you," she said, examining the plastic bottle with interest. "Your people's habit of storing water in artificial containers is fascinating. We usually just, well, we live in it." "You're from underwater?" Marcus asked, his researcher's instincts taking over. "Are there more of you?" "What do you mean by we?" Naira took a careful sip from the bottle before answering. "We're called Neptunians. We have several cities in Earth's oceans, though they're carefully hidden from human detection. This," she gestured to the device on her neck, "is usually quite reliable for surface excursions. I've never had it malfunction before." Marcus sat down across from her, keeping a respectful distance. "But why hide? Why study us in secret?" Naira's expression turned serious, her purple eyes swirling with darker patterns. "Our council considers humanity too unpredictable. They believe you're not ready for contact with advanced civilizations. Your species still fights wars over resources and differences in beliefs. You pollute your oceans, our home." She paused, looking out at the sea. "But some of us disagree. We see potential in humanity. Your adaptability, your creativity, your capacity for growth. Like how you didn't hesitate to save me, even though I clearly wasn't human." Before Marcus could respond, a low humming sound filled the air. The water about 50 meters from his boat began to glow with a soft blue light. Naira stood up quickly, her scales brightening in what Marcus recognized as alarm. "That's a Neptunian search party," she explained hurriedly. "They must have detected my breathing apparatus malfunction. Marcus, I need you to know something quickly. I'm not just any Neptunian. I'm—" The water erupted in a spectacular display as 3 figures emerged, riding what looked like living motorcycles made of bioluminescent sea creatures. They were similar to Naira in appearance, but wore what appeared to be armor made of shifting, liquid metal. The lead figure spoke in a series of musical tones that made Marcus's ears tingle. Naira responded in the same language, her voice firm and commanding. To Marcus's surprise, the 3 newcomers suddenly straightened their postures and bowed their heads slightly. "What's happening?" Marcus whispered. Naira turned to him with an apologetic smile. "What I was trying to tell you. I'm actually Princess Naira, heir to the Northern Pacific Neptunian Kingdom. These are my royal guards. And you, Marcus Chen, have just caused quite a diplomatic situation by saving my life." Marcus felt his knees go weak. Not only had he discovered the existence of an advanced underwater civilization, but he'd also accidentally rescued their princess. His quiet research trip had turned into first contact with an alien species, and now he was somehow involved in royal politics. "Your Highness," one of the guards spoke in accented English, "standard protocol requires us to erase the humans' memories of this encounter." "No," Naira said firmly, moving to stand between Marcus and the guards. "He saved my life without knowing who or what I was. That kind of instinctive compassion is exactly what I've been trying to tell the council about. Instead of erasing his memories," she turned to Marcus with a smile, "I think it's time we showed him our world." The royal guards exchanged worried glances as Princess Naira made her announcement. Marcus couldn't tell if their concerned expressions were about taking the human to their secret city or about disagreeing with their princess. "Your Highness," the lead guard said carefully, "the council's rules about human contact are very clear. And I'm equally clear about my decision. Captain Rylan. Naira interrupted, her voice carrying an authority that hadn't been present during her earlier conversation with Marcus. This human risked his life to save mine without knowing anything about me. Don't you think that deserves more than having his memories erased? Marcus watched the exchange with growing nervousness. The thought of losing his memories of this incredible encounter made his stomach twist, but he also didn't want to cause problems for Naira. "It's okay," he said, trying to sound braver than he felt. "If it's against your laws." "The laws," Naira cut in, "state that humans cannot be allowed to discover our existence unless they prove themselves worthy of such knowledge." She turned to face her guards. "Captain, would you not say that selfless heroism qualifies?" The guard named Rylan shifted uncomfortably. The living motorcycle-like creature beneath him pulsed with soft blue light, seeming to sense its rider's unease. "There's more," Naira continued. "Look at his boat. The equipment. He's a scientist studying coral reefs. He's trying to protect our shared ocean home. If we're ever going to build bridges with humanity, we need to start with people like him." Marcus felt his face warm at her praise, but he also noticed something in her voice. She'd clearly been waiting for an opportunity like this. His rescue hadn't just saved her life. It had given her a chance to push for something she already believed in. Raylan consulted quietly with the other guards in their musical language. While they discussed, Naira moved closer to Marcus. "The council sent me to study human behavior," she whispered. "They wanted reports on why humans couldn't be trusted. Instead, I found countless examples of human kindness, creativity, and courage. But they wouldn't listen to just my words. They needed proof." Before Marcus could respond, Rylan approached them. His liquid metal armor rippled as he moved, reflecting the late afternoon sun. "We will escort you both to the city," he announced formally. "The council will want to hear about this incident directly." However, he turned to Marcus. "You must understand that this is unprecedented. No human has ever seen our city before." Naira beamed triumphantly. "Thank you, Captain. Marcus, we'll need to prepare you for underwater travel. Our breathing technology will let you survive at our depth, but there are other concerns we'll need to address." The next few minutes were a blur of activity. The guards brought out equipment from their living vehicle storage compartments. Marcus found himself being fitted with what looked like a second skin, a shimmering membrane that covered his body from neck to toe. "This will protect you from the pressure at our depth," one of the guards explained. "And this," he held up a device similar to Naira's, "will let you breathe underwater like we do." As Marcus secured the breathing apparatus around his neck, Naira handled the logistics of his unexpected dive. "We can have someone retrieve your boat later," she assured him. "For now, we'll need to move quickly. The council will already know something's happened, and it's better if we explain in person." Marcus took one last look at his research boat, his normal life. Part of him wondered if he was dreaming, but the cool touch of the protective membrane and the gentle hum of the breathing device felt too real. "Ready?" Naira asked, already mounting one of the living vehicles behind a guard. Marcus nodded, climbing behind Rylan on his transport. The creature felt warm and alive beneath him, pulsing with gentle energy. "Hold tight," Rylan instructed. "And welcome, Marcus Chen, to the beginning of a new chapter in human-Neptunian relations. Though for your sake, I hope the council shares the princess's optimism about humanity's readiness for this step." With that ominous statement hanging in the air, they plunged beneath the waves, leaving the surface world behind. The descent into the ocean depths was unlike anything Marcus had ever experienced in his years of marine research. The living vehicles, which Naira called sea pods, moved through the water with impossible speed, yet he felt no pressure or resistance. As they went deeper, bioluminescent trails spiraled behind them, creating a beautiful pattern in the darkening waters. Marcus noticed that his protective membrane automatically adjusted to the increasing pressure, while the breathing device worked so naturally that he almost forgot he was underwater. "Look there," Naira called out, her voice clear through some kind of underwater communication system. She pointed ahead, where the first glimpses of the Neptunian city were becoming visible. Marcus gasped. No amount of scientific training could have prepared him for this sight. The city seemed to grow out of the ocean floor like a living thing. Massive structures of crystalline coral rose into the water, their surfaces glowing with patterns of light that pulsed like heartbeats. Schools of fish swam through transparent tunnels that connected different buildings, while Neptunians moved freely through the water between them. "Welcome to Luminara," Naira said proudly, "the capital of the Northern Pacific Kingdom." Their seapods glided toward what appeared to be the main entrance, a massive archway made of living coral that shifted colors as they approached. Neptunian guards stationed at the entrance straightened to attention when they recognized Naira. Once inside the city proper, Marcus couldn't stop staring. Everything was a perfect blend of nature and technology. What he first thought were decorative plants turned out to be biological computers, processing data through patterns of light that danced along their fronds. Transport tubes made of controlled water currents moved Neptunians efficiently between different levels of the city. "Our technology evolved very differently from yours," Naira explained as they dismounted the seapods. "We learned to grow our devices rather than build them, to work with nature rather than try to control it." They were led through a series of corridors that seemed to be alive, the walls changing color to mark their passage. Other Neptunians stopped and stared at Marcus. Clearly, humans were as fascinating to them as they were to him. The group arrived at what appeared to be a research center. Inside, several Neptunian scientists were working with living computers, studying what Marcus recognized as surface world data, satellite images, weather patterns, and ocean currents. "Before we meet the council," Naira said, "I want to show you something." She led him to a huge display that showed Earth's oceans. "We've been using our technology to help stabilize marine ecosystems damaged by human activity. Those coral reefs you've been studying, we've been trying to help them survive too." Marcus watched in amazement as the display showed Neptunian devices gently nurturing dying coral back to health. "This is incredible," he breathed. "The restoration rates I've been documenting. This explains so much." "Yes," Naira smiled. "We've been working in secret to protect our shared home. But imagine what we could accomplish together if we didn't have to hide." A soft chime echoed through the chamber, and Captain Ryland stepped forward. "Your Highness, the Council is ready to receive you both." As they headed toward the council chambers, Marcus noticed Naira becoming tenser. "What should I expect?" he whispered. "The council consists of the wisest and most powerful members of our society," she replied quietly. "They're not just deciding your fate, Marcus. They're deciding whether this is the moment Neptunians finally reveal themselves to humanity." They stopped before a massive door that seemed to be made of flowing water held in place by energy fields. Naira turned to Marcus with a serious expression. "Just be honest with them," she said. "Show them the same person who didn't hesitate to save a stranger in need. That's the humanity I want them to see." The doors began to part, releasing a soft current of warm water. Beyond them, Marcus could see the silhouettes of multiple Neptunians seated in a semicircle, their scales glowing with authority and power. This was the moment that would either open a new chapter in human history or end with him forgetting it had ever happened. The council chamber was a vast dome carved from living coral and crystal, with currents of water flowing in natural patterns along its walls. 12 Neptunian elders sat in elevated positions, their scales glowing with different colors that seemed to indicate their roles or ranks. Marcus and Naira floated in the center of the chamber, while Captain Raylan and his guards maintained positions near the entrance. The head counselor, distinguished by her pearl-white scales and elaborate coral crown, spoke first. "Princess Naira," her voice carried through the water with perfect clarity, "explain why you have brought a human into our sacred city, violating our most ancient laws of secrecy." Before Naira could respond, the entire chamber shuddered. At first, Marcus thought it was part of the council's intimidation, but the alarmed looks on the elders' faces told a different story. A Neptunian scientist burst through the water doors, her scales pulsing with urgent red light. Council members, we've detected massive seismic activity along the Pacific Plate. A major underwater earthquake is imminent. Another tremor shook the chamber, stronger this time. The living coral walls groaned under the stress. How long? The head counselor demanded. Minutes at most, the scientist replied. The predictive models show it will trigger a tsunami that could devastate both Luminara and the human coastal cities above. The council chamber erupted in urgent discussions. Marcus's scientific mind raced. His years of studying marine geology suddenly seemed crucially important. Your force fields, he spoke up, causing all conversations to stop. Can they protect the city? A technical advisor moved forward. Yes, but generating a shield strong enough to protect Luminara will require all our available power. We cannot protect both our city and the human settlements. Then protect them, Naira said firmly. We can evacuate our people to the deeper cities. There isn't time, the advisor countered. And the humans, millions could die. Marcus studied the holographic display of the seismic activity that the scientist had brought up. Something about the pattern caught his attention. Wait, he said, moving closer to the display. The earthquake hasn't happened yet because the energy is still building up. What if we could release it gradually? The council members looked at him with mixture of curiosity and skepticism. Your technology manipulates water and energy, right? Marcus continued, growing more excited. Instead of trying to block the tsunami, what if we created a series of smaller controlled releases along the fault line? Like opening a pressure valve slowly instead of letting it burst. The technical advisor's scales flickered with sudden understanding. Using our wave manipulators to create controlled pressure releases, it's never been attempted at this scale, but theoretically. Another violent tremor interrupted him, sending decorative coral fragments falling from the ceiling. We don't have time for theories, the head counselor declared. Our priority must be protecting Luminara. No. Naira moved to float beside Marcus. He's right. This is a chance to protect everyone. Neptunian and human alike. Isn't that worth trying? The chamber shook again, more violently. Warning lights began pulsing throughout the city. Even if it works, Captain Ryland spoke up, we would need someone to place the wave manipulators at precise points along the fault line. The pressure at that depth would crush our vessels. But not your protective membranes, Marcus said, touching the second skin he still wore. I can do it. I know exactly where they need to go. The head counselor's eyes fixed on Marcus. You would risk your life to save both our peoples, even though until today you didn't know we existed. That's exactly why you should trust him, Naira insisted. This is what I've been trying to tell you about humans. One final tremor, the strongest yet, made the decision for them. The head counselor raised her hands for silence. Marcus Chen, your plan is either brilliant or suicidal. Either way, we have no choice. She turned to the technical advisor. Give him what he needs. Princess Naira, since you trust this human so much, you will guide him. May the ancient currents protect you both. As they rushed from the chamber, Marcus realized that the fate of two civilizations now rested on his theory and a lot of advanced alien technology he barely understood. No pressure. Marcus and Naira raced through Luminara's corridors on their seapods, followed by a team of Neptunian engineers. The city's warning systems pulsed with urgent red light, and Marcus could feel the tremors growing stronger with each passing minute. Here, the lead engineer handed Marcus what looked like glowing orbs. These are our wave manipulators. They're usually used for controlling ocean currents around our cities, but we've modified them according to your specifications. Marcus carefully stored the devices in his seapod's living compartments. How many minutes do we have? Less than 15 before the main shock hits, another engineer reported, checking a living computer display. The fault line is 17 kilometers from here. Naira, who had been coordinating with other teams, rejoined them. I've got the exact coordinates where the pressure is building. We'll need to place the manipulators at 3 different points. More tremors shook the area, and Marcus watched pieces of coral breaking off from nearby buildings. The Neptunian city's beautiful architecture was starting to show cracks under the seismic stress. Remember, the lead engineer said urgently, once you place each manipulator, activate it immediately. They need to work in sequence to release the pressure gradually. If the timing is wrong, the energy could be redirected instead of released. Marcus finished. His years of studying underwater geology were finally being put to the ultimate test. I understand. They set off immediately, their seapods pushing through the water at incredible speeds. Marcus had to constantly remind himself that the protective membrane he wore would prevent him from being crushed at this depth. The water around them was almost completely dark now, lit only by their vehicles' bioluminescence and the occasional deep-sea creature fleeing the area. There, Naira pointed to a spot where her instruments showed the first pressure buildup. This is position 1. Marcus maneuvered his seapod into position and pulled out the first wave manipulator. The device hummed to life in his hands, its glow intensifying as it sensed the seismic energy. Just like we planned, he muttered to himself, carefully placing the orb in a crevice where 2 sections of the ocean floor met. He activated it, and immediately the device began pulsing, sending out waves that visibly distorted the water around it. It's working, Naira called out, checking her readings. The pressure at this point is already decreasing. Quick, to the second position. They raced to the next coordinate, fighting against increasingly violent tremors. Marcus could see deep cracks forming in the ocean floor. They were running out of time. At the second position, Marcus had to swim down into a narrow fissure to place the manipulator. His heart was pounding, but the device activated successfully, synchronizing with the first one. One more, he said through their underwater communications. How much time? Less than 4 minutes, Naira replied, her voice tense. The main shock is accelerating. Marcus, if we don't make it, we'll make it, he interrupted, pushing his seapod to its maximum speed. They reached the final position with barely 2 minutes to spare. This was the most critical placement. If this manipulator wasn't positioned correctly, the other 2 could actually make things worse by redirecting all the seismic energy to this point. Marcus took a deep breath, though his breathing apparatus made it unnecessary. The fissure here was deeper and more unstable. As he swam down, pieces of rock crumbled around him. Careful, Naira called out. The whole area is about to. A massive tremor hit before she could finish. Marcus found himself trapped in the fissure as rocks shifted above him. But he was also exactly where he needed to be. With shaking hands, he placed the final manipulator and activated it. For a moment, nothing seemed to happen. Then Marcus felt it, a deep, resonant vibration that was different from the earthquakes. The 3 manipulators were working together, releasing the built-up pressure in controlled bursts. The pressure readings are dropping, Naira shouted excitedly. It's working. Marcus, you need to get out of there now. Marcus started swimming up, but the shifting rocks had made the fissure even narrower. As he struggled to find a way out, he realized that saving both civilizations might come at a personal cost. Trapped in the underwater fissure, Marcus could see the wave manipulators working through the cracks above him, their light pulsing in perfect harmony as they released the seismic energy. But falling rocks had sealed his exit route, and his air supply monitor was starting to flash warnings. Marcus. Naira's voice came through his communicator. Stay still. We're coming to get you. He tried to remain calm, remembering his diving training. Panic was a diver's worst enemy. The space around him was getting tighter as more rocks shifted, but at least the violent tremors were subsiding. The manipulators were doing their job. Suddenly, a powerful beam of blue energy cut through the rocks above him. Through the clearing debris, he saw Naira wielding what looked like a living sword made of pure energy, with Captain Raylan and his guards behind her. A little help, Naira shouted to her guards, who immediately joined her with their own energy weapons. Together, they began cutting through the rock like it was paper. Marcus watched in amazement as the princess he'd saved just hours ago now worked frantically to save him. There was something poetic about it, he thought, even as his air supply warning became more urgent. Finally, they cleared enough rock for Marcus to swim through. As soon as he emerged, Naira grabbed his arm and pulled him onto her seapod. They sped away just as the fissure collapsed behind them. That, Naira said as they headed back to Luminara, was either the bravest or most foolish thing I've ever seen. Possibly both. Marcus managed a weak laugh. Coming from someone who nearly drowned doing undercover research, I'll take that as a compliment. When they arrived back at the city, they found a very different scene from the panic they'd left. The warning lights had stopped, and Neptunians were emerging from emergency shelters. The technical advisor rushed to meet them, his scales glowing with excitement. "It worked perfectly," he exclaimed. "The seismic energy was completely dispersed. Both our city and the human coastal areas are safe. The council requests your immediate presence." This time, when they entered the council chamber, the atmosphere was completely different. The head counselor actually smiled as they approached, something Naira later told Marcus was extremely rare. "Marcus Chen," the head counselor's voice carried throughout the chamber, "you have done something unprecedented today. Not only did you risk your life to save both our peoples, but you also showed us something we had forgotten in our technological advancement. Sometimes the simplest solutions are the best ones." She gestured to the holographic displays showing the wave manipulators still working in harmony. "Our engineers were so focused on building stronger shields that they never considered using our existing technology in this way. Your understanding of Earth's geology, combined with our technology, created a solution neither of our societies could have achieved alone." Naira stepped forward. "Honored Council, surely now you see what I've been trying to prove. Humanity is ready for contact with us. They have much to offer if we give them the chance." The council members conferred briefly in their musical language before the head counselor spoke again. "We agree. Marcus Chen, we would like to offer you a position as the first human ambassador to the Neptunian kingdoms. Your role would be to help us establish peaceful first contact with your world's leaders and scientists." Marcus felt overwhelmed. Just that morning, he'd been a marine biologist studying coral reefs. Now he was being offered the chance to help bridge two civilizations. "There's one more thing," Naira added, turning to face him with a formal air. "As the Princess of the Northern Pacific Kingdom, I am officially requesting that you work directly with me to plan the gradual revelation of our existence to humanity." After all, her formal tone softened into a smile. "We've already proven we make a good team." The council chamber filled with the musical sound of Neptunian approval, their scales creating a light show that reflected off the coral walls. As Marcus looked around at these incredible beings who were now trusting him with their greatest secret, he knew his life would never be the same. And somehow, he was perfectly okay with that. 6 months after the earthquake incident, Marcus stood in front of the United Nations General Assembly, his heart pounding. The room was packed with world leaders, scientists, and media representatives from every nation. They had all been summoned for what was being called an announcement that will change human history. Behind him stood a group of his colleagues from leading marine research institutes, all of whom had been carefully selected and gradually introduced to the truth over the past months. Each of them had signed more confidentiality agreements than they could count. Marcus adjusted his tie, remembering how different his life had been half a year ago. The past months had been a whirlwind of secret meetings, carefully orchestrated revelations, and detailed planning sessions with Naira and the Neptunian Council. Dr. Chen, the UN Secretary General, nodded to him. "You may begin." Marcus took a deep breath and stepped up to the podium. "Distinguished leaders, honored guests, citizens of Earth, today I stand before you not just as a marine biologist, but as a bridge between two civilizations." The assembly hall's massive doors opened right on cue. Guests filled the room as Naira entered, accompanied by several other Neptunian representatives. Their natural forms were unveiled for the first time before the world's leaders. No disguises, no hiding. Their scales shimmered under the lights, and their elegant movements made them appear to almost float across the floor. I would like to introduce Princess Naira of the Northern Pacific Neptunian Kingdom, Marcus continued, his voice steady despite the commotion in the hall. 6 months ago, I discovered that humanity is not alone on Earth. Today, we begin a new chapter in our shared history. Naira joined him at the podium, her purple eyes scanning the shocked faces before her. "Greetings, people of the surface world," she said, her clear voice carrying throughout the hall. "We have lived alongside you in Earth's oceans for millennia. Today, we choose to emerge from the shadows." The next hour was carefully choreographed. They showed evidence of Neptunian civilization, their cities, their technology, their efforts to protect Earth's oceans. They explained how the Neptunians had helped prevent natural disasters, including the recent earthquake that could have devastated coastal regions. As they presented, Marcus watched the expressions in the room change from shock to wonder to cautious hope. When they revealed the Neptunians' advanced environmental restoration technology, several world leaders leaned forward in their seats, clearly seeing the potential benefits of cooperation. "We offer you partnership," Naira concluded. "Together, we can face the challenges that threaten our shared home: climate change, ocean pollution, and the preservation of marine life. This is not just first contact. It is an opportunity for both our peoples to build a better future." The silence that followed was deafening. Then, slowly, one person stood and began to applaud. Others joined in until the entire assembly was on their feet. Later that evening, Marcus and Naira stood on the UN building's rooftop terrace, watching the sunset over New York City. News helicopters circled in the distance. The story had broken worldwide, and the media was in a frenzy. "Well," Marcus said, loosening his tie, "we did it. No going back now." Naira smiled, her scales reflecting the orange light of the setting sun. "Are you ready for what comes next? The real work is just beginning." She was right. They had months of diplomatic meetings ahead, technological exchange programs to establish, and environmental initiatives to launch. There would be challenges, skeptics to convince, fears to allay, and countless details to work out. "You know," Marcus said, "when I jumped into the ocean to save you that day, I never imagined it would lead to all this." "That's exactly why we chose you as our first contact," Naira replied. "You acted on instinct to help someone in need, regardless of who or what they were. That's the kind of spirit we need to build bridges between our peoples." Below them, the city lights began to twinkle on, mirroring the bioluminescent patterns of Naira's scales. Two worlds, so different yet connected by one vast ocean, finally meeting as equals. "To new beginnings," Naira said, using the human toast she'd learned from Marcus. "To new beginnings," he agreed, as the last rays of sun disappeared below the horizon, marking the end of humanity's last day of thinking they were alone on Earth.